Hi, and welcome to another episode of About the Authors TV Crime Fiction Edition. I'm your host, Jake Brown. Gentleman's Quarterly has historically described the phenomenon that Boondock Saints became as just that, a phenomenon. Based in part on what the New York Times credited as its formula, the familiar Dirty Harry style appeal to what the public's indignation over crime and its affection for heroes who are taking care of business, as Mr. Flannery put it, making the Boondock Saints a guilty pleasure. And the now legendary cult classic in its mythic story of its creation and creator, Troy Duffy, is something that in ordinary walks of life could have only come out of a movie script or novel. Variety and Keeping Hollywood updated on Duffy's more recent creative goings-on reported that he last directed the Boondock Saints 2 All Saints Day in 2009 and is making his return to directing for the first time in nearly a decade with the psychological thriller The Blood Spoon Council, titled after a vigilante group of the same name that hunts down and executes serial killers. When the FBI commissions a rogue profiler to get inside the head of the group, the investigation is derailed by a game of cat and mouse. Meanwhile, in managing the Boondock Saints franchise legacy, Forbes reported that Duffy settled lawsuits and got his rights back, that he's been busy expanding the Boondock Saints franchise, including a new video game from Critical Mass Interactive that'll feature the voices and likeness of Sean Patrick Flannery, Colin McManus, Norman Reedus as Murphy McManus, and David Della Rocca as Rocca from the two Boondock Saints movies. The game's part of a bigger transmedia push that Duffy's overseeing, including a comic series and a potential television series and third feature film. 25 years after its release, Screen Rant announced to the 2020s generation of Boondock Saints carrying on that Part 3 of the film franchise has gotten a new update, confirming that the project is moving forward with the two original stars. While Deadline added as a bonus that Troy Duffy is planning to write a series of books. And he's here today to talk about it all. Troy, welcome to the show. Growing up, were you as influenced as a storyteller by film and TV as you were by literature? And what within that library could we have found you reading?
My father, he was a Harvard English lit grad and became an English teacher, high school English teacher. He insisted, he had 5 children. I'm the eldest born male son. My sister's the oldest, 1 year older than me. But he made sure all of his children read a novel a month extracurricularly for our whole lives. So at the end of every month, we had to be able to talk about that book at Sunday dinner, and he made sure we knew what we were doing, right? So I read James Joyce at like 12 years old, Siddhartha, The Good Earth, Steinbeck, all the greats. And when you're a kid, you want to go out and play ball, plink your guitar, do something. But I had to get this done. And what it ended up doing, I think, with all of us, I'm pretty damn sure actually, with all of us, all of his children, it addicted them to reading. But it also, because he was so good at dissecting writing and what good and bad and average writing was, it gave us a very good understanding of what the best type of storytelling is, what average storytelling is, what shitty storytelling is. And for instance, the Steinbeck, I remember reading Catcher in the Rye when I was very young, and I remember kind of identifying with it. That was one of those books that you read at the right time and it kind of changes you. I think at least everybody that's read it has told me that. But there were certain parts of it where I was like, Dad, why is this book so much more effective than, say, this last one you made me read, right? And he opened the book to this part where Holden Caulfield was, everybody's studying for exams. They're all phonies. And some kid jumps off the top of the library and commits suicide because all the pressure is too much. The kid's name was Jason Christensen. He circled the J and the C, and he underlined the first syllable, Christ, and Christensen. He said, this is very subtle imagery that Steinbeck's working with here, what he's doing to you. The story of the Bible is sewn into all of our DNA. And then look at what happened with the character. Did he commit suicide because he was overpressured, too much stress, was a phony, or did he die for the sins of all the students at the school? Moments like that would come up in almost every time we talked with our father about writing and what it was. And then, of course, I moved out to LA with a guitar in my hands to be a musician. And writing still got me.
Do you have any teachers beyond your dad, academics, anybody that you count, or even when you got out to LA, that you worked as an intern for, anyone who was of an encouragement for you as a storyteller or an influence proceeding when you started doing it yourself?
No, my story's pretty unique, man. No, even I went to one glorious year and a half of college. Didn't take any writing classes. In my youth, I won this statewide competition twice called the Young Authors Contest. I just didn't really talk to anybody about writing besides my dad, right? So by the time the uniqueness of my situation is the first script I ever wrote, Boondock Saints, just went straight to the top. So it was never even really questioned by those around me. It's not like my agents were like, "Oh, take this writing class, do this symposium. Let's try to do all that." It was just all kind of there from the beginning.
Like you and so many did, at 21, you threw your instruments into your car and headed west to Los Angeles, California, in search of a proverbial record deal. And you wound up with that and a film deal, given in the sort of Hollywood fashion that inspires others to believe in dreams. And it's been well chronicled by every major media outlet in existence, beginning when Variety broke the headline in real time back in 1997 that just 6 weeks ago, aspiring writer Troy Duffy was a bartender at a venerable neighborhood bar on Melrose Avenue. While working at Sloan's, Duffy outlined his idea to Chris Brinker, who was an assistant to New Line's Brian Whitten and once bartended with Duffy. But Duffy had more than just the pitch. He'd completed the script and gave it to Brinker. The project about two Irish twins who become vigilantes has been described as having elements of Pulp Fiction, but with more soul. Duffy in the meantime signed with William Morris as well as musical agent Joel Roman. After that, in his first major deal, as he was showing Boondock Saints, he sold 2 pitches to Paramount for a combined sum of mid-six against high-six figures. But it has only been in recent weeks that New Line and Miramax got down to the business of Boondock Saints, culminating first in the Miramax deal. The deal also has Duffy directing for the first time. His band The Brut will do the music. Now there's more to this saga to come, but please if you would, take your fans back inside your head, even before you experience this sudden whirlwind off to the true life-imitating art event that first inspired you to begin writing Boondock Saints in a protest of sorts to your outrage.
I moved out there, $150 in my pocket. Um, and yeah, eventually my brother came out. We formed our band, and we were both the singer, songwriter, guitarists, and then so yeah, we were living in this real shithole right off of this. I think was Hollywood and Sycamore, right where the kind of boulevard starts. And it was kind of, there had been already kind of things in there that had happened there. Taylor and I worked at a bar at the time called Sloan's, and it was on Melrose. We were the sort of bouncers there and doormen, and we kind of had a reputation. It was a bit of a rough and tumble place, a good weekly brouhaha in there. And we started developing a reputation of like, don't cause any shit in here because you'll be dealing with the Duffy brothers and that's not going to end well. So the characters of Connor and Murphy were based on me and my brother kind of loosely, though it should be said I have never killed anybody. And yeah, we were living in this place, dude, that was like, it was one time I go into my apartment and there's a guy just sitting there, and it took me a minute to figure out he was robbing me. He's just like going through that, and he just gets out, he's smoking a cigarette. He just stands up, he's like, "Hey man." I'm like, "Hey." And I thought he was my brother's friend or something for a minute. And then, it kind of dawns on you, this guy's robbing me. So yeah, that was exciting. But yeah, one time I came home, the ambulance is wheeling a body out, and my brother's standing there in the open door. There was a guy kind of across and down from us. He was this heroin guy, and some very young girl had OD'd in his apartment, and I guess he hadn't called the police for a couple of days. She had rigor mortis, and her foot, she died with her knee bent, and they had it over the edge. She had a cowboy boot. And the guy ran up to her and stuffed his hand down her boot, said, "That bitch got my money," pulled it out, and he just walked right back in his place, shut the door. And that was one of, that would probably be the closest that Taylor and I ever came to actually, sitting a person down and and having a real hard talk with him. Very, very upsetting that was. So yeah, I started writing the script, just as a way to blow off steam and kind of address some of the worst things you can imagine. You see victims all over Hollywood. And yeah, so that's why I began to write the script. I wouldn't say it was 100% that incident, you know? Like, for instance, Taylor and I moved down to this place on Stearns with the band. We had a nice big house, rehearsal space in there. Everybody thinks about vigilantism. It's got to be the number one theme in American film. The good guys against the bad guys, all the way up from the 100 $200 million X-Men things, all the way down to $6 million Boondock Saints, and even less than budget than that. So it's something that everybody thinks about, right? You think, wow, you see that story on the news that upsets you so much, you know? I mean, I remember once my grandmother, I caught her crying in front of the TV, and it was a news report on an old woman who had been beaten, stuffed in her closet, and robbed. It was like a home invasion. She was too weak to get out, and she died by starvation. And my grandmother, who was one of the kindest, gentlest saints that ever lived, looked right at me with tears in her eyes and said, "Whoever did that should be taken to an island and shot in the fucking head." And she did use the F word. And I'd never heard her talk like that. And I remember, understanding how she was feeling. I also remember going, why would you take him to an island first? You know, just go up and do it. Right. So the reason I came up with the whole Irish angle and Conor, the Duffys are obviously it's Irish name. We have some lineage, but it's everybody loves Irish people. I remember guys that would come to the bar that were off the boat Irish. Everybody loved them. I loved them. And so there was something about them where they could get away with more than Americans. There was also something about Connor and Murphy coming from a foreign land, from the Boondocks, and coming here to a beautiful American city that just so happened to be violent as hell, and making that one decision that we all get right up to the line of and pull back. They're just going to kill bad people because they're breathing the same air as our children, and they are threats to us, and that was the sort of new vision I put on vigilantism. I remember all these 80s and 90s TV shows, the A-Team. You had to go plead your case, and hopefully they'd help you out and kill the bad guy. You don't have to. Connor Murphy sees something wrong. Their moral code tells them, well, yeah, that guy makes the list. We're doing it now. The real antagonist there was organized crime, which frankly, today it's gone, has kind of gone away. It wasn't the way it was back in the day. But everybody was just sick of that shit. So I was like, all right, yeah, we have to kill some mobsters here. Russian, Italian, let's kill some gangsters and some powerful ones. We want bodies hitting the floor and the people of Boston going, fuck, we got vigilantes here. So he ended up being the embodiment of it. I went straight from behind the bar to virtually a bidding war between the two biggest indie houses, which was New Line and Miramax. So Harvey Weinstein was going head to head with Mike DeLuca. So they both wanted it. Were offering me the world. So at one point, I'm just like, I'm directing. They're both like, okay, boom, back to fighting. So I just took advantage of it. But at the same time, I was encouraged to by my agents who had the same unique experience I did, because I didn't have to have some kind. I had no agents until they read the script, and then every agent wanted me. It was this kind of a very unique paradigm that was happening in Hollywood at that time concerning me. So I took advantage of a lot of points where I believe other writers either weren't offered the opportunity or didn't have the balls to say what they wanted, and mean it. I also think that I think those guys deal with artists and authors all the time. And I think that a lot of these artists tend to be, I don't know, not the strongest willed people in the world. So agents, I don't know if you've had actor friends and seen them around their agents, but sometimes it's like they're their mother or something, you know? And I was never like that. So yeah, I think a lot of that had to do with maybe like one of my favorite books. Um, The 48 Laws of Power. Right? I read a little bit of this every day. I hadn't read it at the time, but I had just naturally followed some of those rules. Right? When I read it, I realized how successful I had been at following my own instincts, following some of these rules, and now I'm a lot better at it after rereading this book 10 times by now and understanding more about life and about people, about how business gets done.
Entertainment Weekly as well kept their finger on the pulse of your one-of-a-kind story as it continued to evolve in both script drafts and eventually on screen, with you behind the camera directing, and the new vogue of Quentin Tarantino, Paul Thomas Anderson, and Vincent Gallo doing so. Adding that once the Miramax deal became a big news story, it was big enough to grace the cover of USA Today. The closest Duffy had ever come to directing at this point was directing drunk malcontents out of the bar. Now, literally overnight, he was the toast of the town, the quote, next Tarantino. He was also meeting with the likes of Mark Wahlberg, who attended the barbecue which was held to celebrate the Miramax deal, Brendan Fraser, Vincent D'Onofrio, Jake Busey, Billy Zane, Jeff Goldblum, and the late Heath Ledger. By the spring of 1998, Duffy and Brinker had struck a new deal with Franchise Films, a company founded by producer Elie Samaha. Stephen Dorff was now in the frame to play one of the brothers, and for a while it looked like Patrick Swayze was going to portray the pivotal role of the gay and ultimately cross-dressing FBI agent Smecker, the role that eventually went to Willem Dafoe. Duffy eventually made the Boondock Saints for $6 million, less than half the budget he'd been promised by Harvey Weinstein. The un-PC nature of the Boondock Saints appraised shoot activities would be more than matched by what ultimately appeared on screen. Indeed, it became a defiantly illiberal piece of work, and not just because of the brothers bypassing the judicial system. The film ultimately starred Norman Reedus and Sean Flannery as Murphy and Connor McManus, two Irish-American fraternal twins who become vigilantes as they work to rid Boston of sinister forces. Please take fans behind the scenes and onto the set as you crafted this now mythical among fans revenge story set in Boston with your McManus brothers acting on behalf of a victimized public as vigilantes eliminating threats from organized crime families of every stripe. As EW ultimately reported that the kids did find the film and they thought it was rock and roll.
I had a friend of mine who worked in the movie business as like a PA or an AD or something, get me a movie script. And this is back to I don't think there was many movie writing programs like, I use Final Draft now, but I would just write stuff on a notebook and then transcribe it on this rented computer on those 3.5-inch floppy disks and try to make it look like the script. The script was the Bear star that starred Robin Williams. Movie that had already been made is what I wanted to see how it was written. So I just copied the format. I'll tell you what's interesting about Rocco, and not many people know this. He was my boss at Sloan's. He managed the bar. He wanted to be an actor. I think he got like a couple of, he was in a soap opera for a little while, maybe a commercial. But yeah, just trying to work as an actor and dig it out. It was him and our friendship and his personality that while I was writing the script, I just put him in, called him Rocco. I borrowed from his he and my interactions together. For some reason he really connected with me, and ultimately he ended up connecting with a lot of people. That's like that's like the favorite character maybe beyond the brothers. And it's almost because we all have somebody like that in our life. We have somebody that reminds us of that, some high school or college friend who was like a lovesick puppy dog, would do anything for you, loved you to death, ride or die type person, even though they might not, have all, all the skills in the world. He's getting in there and getting it done. Rocco is the kind of guy, even if I was wrong and a fight started, he jumps the bar knowing full well he's going to get his ass kicked, but he gets in there. And that's the kind of loyalty that I grew up with, in New England, and my brothers grew up with, and we embraced. So I loved Rocco well before I wrote him. I loved his performance. Well before it came out. I was sitting in the editing room going, Made the right choice on that motherfucker. Everybody was trying to get that role, dude. Benicio del Toro wanted that role. Bunch of famous people, and the company would get on you, right? They'd be like, "Hey, famous, celebrity actors want the role," and I ultimately had to put it in my signing contract. You don't get the script. You don't get anything until you approve him in the role. And then they tried to gently talk me out of it. I just wouldn't let him do it. I knew he was gold. He still is, by the way. He lives just a couple hours from us. He's up in Louisville, Kentucky right now. Rocco and I, for the first time, are going to one of those cons together. We're going to be there, see some fans. Uh, Early October here in Owensboro, Kentucky. Carlo Rota played Jacovetta, and I rented almost this 3-story beautiful house in Toronto when we were filming, and all my friends who were actors that I brought in for it, the band, my brother, everybody staying there. It was probably 20 people in this house. It was a big split place. There was like blow up mattresses everywhere. So Rhoda, I auditioned on a weekend. We hadn't been able to find a Papa Joe, right? And I can get him in there, put him at the end of this long dining table. We were like Airbnb-ing, even though it didn't exist at the time. It was like a family's huge house with a jacuzzi and everything. So we put him in there, and me and all the guys are there watching. And I wanted the intimidation factor. I wanted to see, if he could pull this off in front of a camera. He was already a fairly well-known actor in Toronto, even had a cooking show. He was an excellent chef. So he's like, hey, because he's English. He's got an English accent when he talks to him. And that surprised me. He said, "Look, I can't do Boston accent." I'm like, nobody can do the Boston accent. Almost nobody can pull that off, right? And he was like, "I want to do it with an Italian accent." He is Italian, has Italian moms and dads, everything. So he does it, and about 30 seconds in, I was just like, cut. Yes. Yes, you're hired. I don't want to talk to anybody else about this. And I realized he showed me some of the benefits we were going to get out of him using an Italian accent rather than a Boston line. When he said, "You insignificant little fuck," you can put that on TV because he's saying insignificant. He got away with slipping the C word through the FCC, right? So, yeah, that was finding the right people for that was a difficult process. Especially, there was a lot going on with the brothers too. Difficult process, but it was almost like inventing Smecker as a character. It fell out of my head. Then I started seeing the benefits when I wrote it. It's instantaneous recognition. That's my Papa Joe. That's my Rosengirdle. All the other characters. That's my Dolly, Duffy, Greenlee. I knew immediately. At a certain point, you just know immediately.
FBI agent Paul Smecker still holds a very special place in fans' hearts. How did this wholly original character first appear and then evolve in your imagination as you were writing, and then directing Willem Dafoe in that forever memorable role on the set?
Yeah, just fell into my head one day. Can't explain that. And when I started writing him, I saw the benefit right away because fans even today are like, "Why'd you have to make him gay?" And I'm like, you realize how much we got out of that? You know, him being so brilliant that all these immediately at odds with Irish Catholic heterosexual cops, obviously, right? But him being so brilliant that they all overcame it and they're following him around with notebooks, right? Him being able to have little kitschy jokes, you know, like the cuddle joke with his lover. Him being able to dress as a woman, and go in there and take you. He had so much benefit for story, the river dance and shit. Oh my God. Me and Willem came up with that on the day just because he was walking around the build. They had to make that whole room, right? It was a sunken in sofa. And he was just walking along the top of it, and I just saw him skip a little bit. And he and I talked and worked that whole thing out. It wasn't in the script. And it became one of those memorable moments. Like it was funny too, because we were talking about it, and he goes, incredibly inappropriate if he danced. And I said, yes, it would. And then suddenly, like two kids in a sandbox, he's like, all right, turn the fucking camera on.
We'd love if you'd look back next on creating this classic through the storytelling lens of the director's chair, especially winging it behind the camera for the first time in that role.
I don't think there was any intimidation. It was almost like a nervous energy to get going, right? And I didn't know anything about cameras and cinematography. Luckily, I hired my friend who I had already worked with. The very first thing I shot was a music video for my own band for a song called Two Ravens that we did, all black and white. And then I found Adam Kane, who is now one of the biggest six gunslinger TV directors out there. So I again a happy coincidence, or you know something plus opportunity equals whatever. But yeah, me and Kano had a really great relationship. I would just look through the camera and be like, it's not big enough. And he would either pan out or change a lens. And I would tell him I want it going like this. This is what I want to see about this big. We're doing hand signals, you know. And he had already worked with me, so he was used to it. I'll bet you some of the other, ADs and stuff like that were like, "What? This guy doesn't know shit," but we're getting all this amazing footage, right? And that's kind of how it went the whole time. And then there was this one time where the dailies are going to the company, and they called up and they're like, "Tell them to stop shooting slow motion. That whole toilet stunt, it's all in pieces, parts. It's all slow motion." We were shooting super slow motion actually on that. And I went into the edit room on a weekend where we weren't working with my also amazing editor, Bill Durandi. And we put it to music and edited together that scene and just sent it to them. And they were like, all right, never mind. And that's sometimes how you solve a problem in situ like that. Address it right away. These guys are producers and financiers. They deserve answers. They deserve to be made to feel comfortable. They're spending slightly under $6 million. So take care of it, make them feel good. And that was always how I treated, that's always been how I've treated the sort of top brass producers and financiers, almost like a blue collar guy. Get all these things stacked up in 60 minutes. Done. Here you go.
Boondock Saints is such a classic title to this day. Did you have other working titles before settling on that one? Or was it the obvious keeper all the time?
No, I was thinking about titles. I knew it had to be something Saints. Boston Saints was lazy. All these, and then I was driving. I was driving. Right, I'm a biker, so I've had a motorcycle, my whole life. My first car was a bike. You can split traffic in LA, which I was like, yes, splitting traffic, and I just saw a moving truck. Said Boondock Moving Company, students, and I just put Boondock with Saints. Loved it. And the funny thing was, we came real close to losing that name. Fans, I'm talking to you now. The producers didn't understand it, and they were throwing lists of names at me. And I was just going, no, it's Boondock Saints. But nobody knows what that means. I'm like, well, they will at the end of the film. These guys aren't like us. They're not from around here. They're from the Boondock. Well, we know that, Troy. We read it. And they begged me, and I just wouldn't do it. And, there's two lessons here. One, stick to your guns when you know your instincts are telling you to do the right thing. But the way I handled it was terrible. At the time, it was way you're supposed to handle a situation like that, if you want to continue to build your black book and your career in this industry, is you're supposed to listen to your producers, look at all their notes, tell them, I'm going to give me a couple days to really consider this, guys, and look through all the names that you've suggested. And I'll get back to you after I've given this some real forethought. Then, if you want to stick to your guns, you go, guys, I've looked at everything. I just can't. My instincts are telling me, that I need to keep this. I'm thank you for all your work, blah, blah, blah. Then they don't care anymore. They move on, right? What I did was, no, fuck you. It's Boondock Saints. I don't want to see your stupid fucking ideas. And that was the wrong way to handle it. And I guess the lesson was what I just said, the right way. So good kids, do it that way.
As an added bonus, your band The Broad, now going by the same name as the film, fulfilled another dream when you signed to Atlantic Records for the Release the Hounds album, and with music comprising much of the film's soundtrack. How amazingly full circle did that moment feel?
It was. My brother and I were out there to do music. We formed our band, the Boondock Saints, two of our dear friends, one drummer, one bassist. And yeah, the movie deal happened first, and I used the movie deal to get us the record deal. And like I said, the first thing I ever shot was get your first movie payment, which was Miramax at the time buying the script. We didn't end up doing it with them, but I had some money, so I spent it on doing the music video because I wanted to get the band signed, and a bunch of our music was in both films actually. Um, so yeah, we get signed with Atlantic Records, and yeah, it's a trip, man. I remember it was for the first time. Like by now, I had been kind of flown first class to New York a few times, you know, and now all the guys were, you know, four blue collar mugs in first class over drinking to go see get what his name was, real short guy, Atlantic Records. Tony something. He was the president of Atlantic. We performed for him in his office. He's like, "You guys don't have to perform. We already signed you. Now go off and enjoy life."
Equally, how surreal was it to take your finished film to debut at the Cannes Film Festival?
And that's bucket list stuff. But yeah, we went. It was just amazing. This part of the world is insanely beautiful. And yeah, but we didn't know anybody. Nobody had seen Boondock by that time. Hadn't been released anywhere. You go to Cannes to make all those deals. So we were there, and we were going to other people's screenings and seeing some horrifying thing. Half an audience walk out, or sometimes only 8 people show up, in these beautiful, beautiful theaters, man. Like opera houses in some of them. And word got out somehow without us knowing that Boondock was hot, right? We go in there, and I couldn't get a seat. It was all filled up, and there's people standing. So I was like, all right, let's just go out, have a beer, and come back and see. So we stayed for the first few minutes. We were getting all the reactions that I had hoped. Nobody was leaving. We went and had a beer, came back, standing ovation at the end of the film. Sold in every territory. So yeah, that was an amazing, amazing experience.
The New York Times would then report on this natural headline generator of a story, who then documenting the aftermath of how it became an indie classic, began by agreeing that it's hard to argue with the statement that after Miramax cut him loose and a tiny distributor managed a feeble theatrical release, Boondock Saints went on to substantial DVD sales in 7 different incarnations. Bruce Nash and Nash Information Service said the total domestic video sales have been upward of $50 million. Though Mr. Duffy got none of that money thanks to his original deal, and a lawsuit over the rights to the property kept him tied up for 5 years. Meanwhile, word of mouth, propelled by the internet, was making it a cult movie, while Entertainment Weekly continuing its coverage of his ongoing story. After it became clear that Boondock had acquired a cult following, Duffy started selling Boondock merchandise through his website. That helped keep the wolf from the unemployed orator's door, and funded a lawsuit against the franchise and other parties that would last for years. As Deadline confirmed, it eventually made staggering sums on home video. Now, to officially establish it on the record, well, there have been rumors circulating throughout the film industry and on the internet for years about how much money this franchise has actually generated over the past quarter century. Any clarity you want to offer there is welcome. And what was it like surviving the insanity of the lawsuit over the years you spent fighting to get your rights back successfully?
There's a lot to that, man, because what happened was we were, you know, after Cannes and all those territories sold, a lot of that money, it was actually before all those territories sold, and there was Me Fed right after that, or before that. We were in the United States, and what you do when you have a small independent film that a small indie house put $6 million in, but you got like these 2 new faces, but you got Defoe, marquee player. Willem's one of the best. You got Billy Connolly, you know. What you do is you go to their studio lots, Fox, Paramount, Sony, and they screen your film right from the reels, from the old film reels. And they do it for all their buyers and all their employees. And we were having massively attended screenings, and no one was leaving. That always happens. The first thing they tell you when you do a screening at the studio, and you're basically saying, buy my film and put it through your machine and put it out in theaters and promote it. Make me famous, make my film famous. That's what you're saying. And every time when you do these screenings, they tell you to don't worry if people leave. These are all people with jobs here. They got other things they need to do. And for all you know, they could have hated it, but they also could have loved it and just had to go. Nobody was leaving all the time. And Columbine had just occurred maybe 2 weeks before this. And we were kind of reading the tea leaves and hoping not, but this big producer from Sony, I think, yeah, he came up to me and my producers and said, your film's been blacklisted from US screens. Nobody's going to show Boondock because they saw it as having too many similarities to the actual incident. Youthful guys doing violence. There was even a kid, Rocco was in a trench coat. So was Il Duce, the boy's father. So yeah, that was like, you go to the bar and get right to the bottom of a glass of beer. And Billy was the only one. He's like, dear boy, they'll find it. It's rock and roll, you know? And he was right because we released on Blockbuster and it became Blockbuster's highest selling straight to video hit in their history, making an ungodly amount of money in a 6-month rental window, right? Which told us that we were right, but it also gave the earliest fans of Boondock a real axe to grind because they were like, well, Hollywood finally churns out something we like and you fuckers don't even put it in theaters. But yeah, from that point forward, yeah, it has become one of the highest grossing, most popular cult classics, growing in its audience every year. We just had a 25th year anniversary celebration. They seem to never forget about it. It just keeps growing. I had a producer once that was like, this goddamn movie has a shelf life of a chunk of fucking uranium. And that's what it is. People just keep showing it to other people, brothers to brothers, sisters to sisters, friend to friend. It's always been that kind of what Norman called the silent explosion. Like it came out in Blockbuster. Suddenly Sean and Norm can't go to the grocery store.
So
And they're seeing kids with tats and stuff. And so it was almost accidental. If Columbine had not happened, yes, we would have gone out as a commercial film. And who knows what would have happened then? I'm not into, crystal balls. What happened at the time felt like a tragedy. We've all done all this work. This company spent all this money, all this time, all these people, hundreds of people work on a film, all these actors. We all think it's the greatest thing since sliced bread and you just get fucked by something you had nothing to do with. And on top of that, you got mixed feelings because a bunch of kids died there, That was really fucking bad. So are you really going to get up and yell and scream about it? We had to tuck our tail between our legs and take what was offered. That was who became a very dear friend of mine, Dean Wilson, who was a CFO of Blockbuster. And he said, we're going to release this as I forget what they were calling it. It was a special kind of film. Instead of like 2 or 3 copies per, I believe, the around 7,000 Blockbuster stores, they were releasing it like a Blockbuster exclusive. That's what it was called. They were releasing it like a big film, 60 to 120 copies a store because Dean saw it and he believed in it. He was like, no, this is way too cool. And yeah, they had this celebration at the corporate offices where this unbelievably talented cake maker airbrushed with some kind of sugary paint on a huge cake. It looked like a photograph. It was the cover of our VHS at the time. The brothers sitting there with the guns, and they had a huge corporate blowout that he, sent me some pictures of where they were celebrating how well Boondock had done, and how it had hit unprecedented rental numbers, and then what's called sell through. They take all their used rental VHSs and sell them for like $5.99, and it was just monster. They have this old adage in the business: you never make money on your first film. That's what they tell filmmakers. You're just going to get, you're going to get robbed blind. It's always about your second or third. You have to get, go up the thing. What they never tell you is the other side of that, which is maybe your first film didn't make any money. Mine did. Those numbers you have are very old. Those are from 2005. Boondock has been continuously selling every quarter around the world. So has two. Boondock 2 has eclipsed one, well, just kind of snuck ahead fairly recently. It's been paying back end to me and all the actors for 14 years now, 15 years. The entire brand, both films and say merchandise and television, all in is about 350 million. But the budgets of the films together were 14. My first film was 6. My second was 8. So pretty good return on investment, I think.
After emerging victorious, the New York Times reported in 2009 that a decade later, the glass slippers on the other foot. The Boondock Saints 2 All Saints Day, the Guns N' Roses sequel to the shoot 'em up that almost was never released, is arriving. Accessorized with Roman Catholic iconography and a smattering of Latin, it resurrects the fraternal assassins Connor and Murphy McManus, again played by Sean Patrick Flanery and Norman Reedus, to blow away a raft of Boston bad guys, and channels Mr. Duffy's dismay with a self-help 12-step hippie generation that would question vigilante justice. Please take viewers inside the next leg of the journey that you went on in the course of making the sequel.
I was knocking on every door in Hollywood to make that sequel for those 9 years, and all of those doors were getting closed in my face. And in a very strange way, they couldn't, they couldn't, they just knew it had been, because of the way it had been cult released like that. They knew it was a big hit at Blockbuster, but Blockbuster wasn't sharing their numbers. They didn't know whether my sequel, required or justified an investment of 10 million, 20, 50. How much did it make? They didn't know that $50 million number at that time. That was out of a lawsuit. We had to actually go do discovery to get that number, and then reporters got a hold of it. Oh, it was grossed $50 million. It's gone way over that. Boondock, that's what a cult classic is. Always sells, spikes at holidays, Christmas, and in our case, St. Pat's. So not for lack of trying, and also we were going through a lawsuit at the time in which those rights, I mean, the bigger reason that we went through that lawsuit was to get the rights to do the sequel, because there was a thing called a right of first refusal that a whole bunch of people that I was suing had. So they had my rights to do the sequel and could stop me, and did. So that's another reason it took 8 years. The mockumentary Overnight is also another reason why that took you. Documentary. I mean, at the time, you could go to Blockbuster and rent 2 hours of me acting like an asshole, and so there were several reasons. But yeah, the day after we settled the lawsuit for an undisclosed amount, yeah, we had to deal with Sony to do the sequel for 8 million. Great guy over there, Steve. I wrote it in bits and pieces along the way, but there was some what the experience took me. It was a bit humbling, but it told me that I had this odd fan base within the business. You know, producers, the people, the companies that I'm pitching for Boondock, they would, there's a whale coming in. Let's all get together. And I would sit with these people, and they would be quoting my lines back to me, tell me stories about how I got them. And these are producers and their assistants. Tell me stories about how I got them when they were in college, you know? And I had like this odd fan base, and I was looked at much like a local kid that made it, a local hero, if you will. And but they would be like, what really happened with Harvey Weinstein? They'd want all these kind of, juicy details. Sometimes I'd share, sometimes I wouldn't. Sometimes that documentary was like a dark cloud hanging over everything. So I'd either address it, but what it made me do was get my pitch thing down. I'm sure you probably noticed I'm a fairly animated person. I could communicate well after going through all this, you know? At first, you almost let your producers handle it. And it always gets to the same place. We don't know how much money this movie has made. Then suddenly I start handling it. Years of pitching under fire, too, because some of these people did not like me for A, B, C, D reasons. Some of these guys were failed writers. And when I got my deal, they fucking hated my guts, bro. There was one time I had a friend who was a writer who was at the end of the bar all the time. While I'm like sometimes bartending or bouncing, I couldn't just continue the story from almost a decade earlier, you know? So part of that was necessity. But then yeah, as you begin to think about it, the gems of that story start revealing themselves as you write. The idea that they're out there hiding out, that there would be a worldwide, I mean, they would be, they kind of went public at the end there, you know, and uh, to to have them come back to Boston almost like an avenging angel, you know, that thought hit me. Then all three of them, Dad's got to be in this too. Everybody loved Il Duce. They loved Billy, and he was such a, I mean, that whole the whole, here I got the this is the loaded Duce, all the guns in there, all rubberized. But yeah, when this scene when he opens up his jacket and starts pulling guns, you know, that was one of those that cemented um that character and the way Billy later, would play it later. In the fans, like instant classic, awesome uh uh cult violence shit, right? So yeah, that character I knew had to be further flushed out, and father and sons had to kind of be there almost as the holy trinity of badassery. The challenge was, time passed. In that time frame, the mafia, when was the last time we heard about some big organized crime bust in the United? That was when it went away. So figuring out new enemies was the thing, and it was fun and cool to do that and mix it all in with their history, almost like the ultimate old, mustache Pete mobster who everybody forgot about, the Roman. There's all this darkness and great imagery, and we even go flashback into Il Duce's past and see that he had an earlier vet. I wanted to the real shame of it was for me, and you must talk about this with every writer or director or actor that uh you ever had an actor go, "Oh, I would have killed that role," you know? If I was given a few $1 million more and about a week's more of shooting, yeah, I could have done some much better stuff. And it's funny too, because that's how you think about it. If you do a successful first film, you think, hey, they're going to let me do another one with a higher budget. Maybe I get 10 million this time, I mean, if I'm successful with that, maybe 50. That was kind of what I was looking at. Um, but it really didn't happen. We technically had less money and less time to make two than we did one, because when you're shooting in Canada, which we had to save money, you have to lock the dollar. And we were able to lock it at a really good rate on the first one and a shitty one on the second one. So technically we had less time and less money. But, both still my babies, both had lots of Boondock imagery and great stunt work, and the actors killed it. A lot of it was a bit of a, family reunion. We didn't get everybody back. There were too many people that already had jobs. We had to do this super fast on two. But yeah, you want all these people back. You want your first AD back. Oh, he left the country. You want your props guys back. Oh, that company dissolved. You know, and so we had to just kind of patch it together, move forward. It was fun. It was not, the magic thing the first shoot was. But yeah, we had a lot of fun and had to go up against, yeah, a much bigger beast on that one. Um, but ultimately we got something very, very cool out of it.
With Boondocks 2 taking on its own expansion of the franchise always growing following, with favorite scene replays on YouTube into the tens of millions of views, and the benefit of being released on DVD and Blu-ray, rotated countless times across the world on cable and now across streaming networks, IMDb, among other top movie news sites, recently confirmed rumors that Norman Reedus and Sean Patrick Flanery are ready to go back to the Boondocks. Both actors will reprise their roles as the fraternal vigilante twins Connor and Murphy in the Boondock Saints 3. Now, we understand originally there was talk of a TV series 2 in the works before you settled on the film as the proper reunion framework for this storied saga to continue.
In terms of 3, I thought, probably like all your viewers, you get a TV deal to do 3 and a television deal. Why aren't we doing both? I mean, the television, they're younger guys. They're going to be 22-year-olds. Totally different story about them starting out. Why can't you do both? Well, I'll tell you why you can't do both. Because the movies guys say, nope, you can't do TV. That offends our project. And the TV guys go, you got to drop the movie deal because the people in the mix, and no matter how much I tried to reason with them, they both were like, it's one or the other. So it forced me into like a Mexican standoff that I did not want to deal with. But yeah, okay, the Boondock Bible. I've been trying to get that. The fact is, I've been trying to get that television show made for at least the last 15 years. And we came close several times with some wonderful companies and even some TV studios. Something always happened. And a lot of it was that, Boondocks kind of bad luck, I went in once to pitch this TV company. I forget, could have been AMC or HBO, one of the, and there's a shooting, another massive shooting the day before. I mean, half the people weren't even there. And I was like, we should reschedule this. But it turned out that they didn't even want to deal with it. There were points like that where just bad luck hits you. What happened was I was staring down the barrel at 2 deals, and I had to make Sophie's choice. I could either do, and this was just very recently, this great company, probably the franchise kings of Hollywood, Thunder Road. They did John Wick. They did Sicario, one of my favorite brands in terms of action films, and a bunch more. They wanted Boondock, but they wanted to bring on their own director, possibly their own writers to kind of rewrite the script I had done. And so, yeah, it's, that moment where somebody's going to back up a truckload of money to your back door, but you kind of feel like, am I selling my soul or abandoning something that, and then at the exact same time, this massive TV deal comes in, or the opportunity for it. And I did a Zoom pitch of all things. Did a Zoom pitch to all these executives. And they bought it same day. So all of a sudden I'm negotiating a television deal and a film deal. The film deal is me, writing and producing and stuff, but I'm basically giving it to somebody else to control for potentially 3, 4, and 5, right? And I'm not really going to be that involved, but yeah, I'll make a lot of money. The other one, it's nothing but my involvement. Leading up a writer's table. I am directing episodes, everything. I have to sit down and pick a showrunner, an extremely important relationship. And we had some heavy hitters that wanted to do Boondock. So I'm being pulled in both directions at this point. I'm literally walking around looking at the sky and just saying, just please fucking tell me what to do. What it all came down to at the end was the first lesson, strangely enough, that I learned in this business. When you are lucky enough to have a fan base and they are telling you what they want you to do, you do it 100% of the time, or it's at your own peril. So it was an extremely difficult decision to make, but I did it. because my fans want those two brothers, Norm and Sean, in those peacoats, killing bad guys and saying badass Irish shit. That's it. Now, could I have sold a TV show to them? Brand new younger brothers starting out in their 20s? Most likely, yeah. But giving that up fucking sucked. Oh God. But yeah, I did it because of that first lesson I learned in the industry. It's rare, guy like me on his first project. There's so much rareness going on and things that seem it couldn't have been a coincidence to even get me here. I just knew that uh, the fact that I have a fan base that's growing every year, the fact that my first movie was an instant cult classic, the fact that both movies have grossed so much and continue to sell all around the world, all these things were rare, and all these things were because of the fans. Somehow, some way, what I did connected to them. And I know that if they took a vote, they'd have said, do three. You will do three, Duffy. So I made the deal at the end of the day because of that. Here's a fun story. I started doing the movie, and we're casting the film. John Bon Jovi wants to be one of the brothers. And he had just begun acting at the time. I had seen the work he'd done in Ally McBeal. I don't know if you remember that. And I was like, he's really good. But I couldn't see him as one of the brothers. He and I talk on the phone. He's like, all right, come out to, they fly me out there to see him. I have this hotel room. And he goes, no, 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 you're not staying in a hotel room. And he literally he told me to walk to Times Square, go to this building. And I get in there and I got my backpack. And this guy's like, Mr. Duffy. Yeah, he goes, all right, we're going to send you up to John's suite. Gives me this card, stick it in the elevator. Elevator opens up into this penthouse. And I walk out and I recognize it immediately. I was a huge fan of Bon Jovi. It was the one where he was playing piano in the music video Bed of Roses. Rose petals were falling down on it. It overlooked Times Square, right? And I'm looking around, and then John calls me and he's like, are you there? You got it? I'm like, yeah. Can I get can I have a friend? Because I had a friend in New York, Chapman, can he come up here? Oh, yeah, yeah. Anybody want? He's just like, sleep there, do your thing, and we'll meet tomorrow because his limo was going to pick me up, take me out to, I think, Nutley, New Jersey, where he was. So I had one night to whoop it up in New York with my buddy, and we're staying in John Bon Jovi's penthouse overlooking Times Square. And it was insane. I saw one of a kind black and white of them and the Rolling Stones getting off of the Bon Jovi jet. Like you're just walking around feeling like you're spying, or like you just broke into some guy's house who's famous. It was the coolest thing ever. And me and Chap went out, had a couple drinks at Scruffy McDuffie's, went back, and I couldn't sleep in one of his beds. I fell asleep on the couch. I was like, I'm not, there was something weird about it, and then went out and met him at his place in New Jersey, kind of out in this beautiful, beautiful kind of countryside. And we sat for a while. I really liked John. We got on together. Ultimately, though, when I got home, this was like, by the way, this was sort of around the time, I think I had found Norman at that time and not Sean, or maybe Sean and not Norm. But that was around the time where I'm really starting to, find the brothers, and it just didn't really work out. But I loved him so much, and we had such a decent, meeting that when I did two, he called, kind of did it agent wise and said, anything you got for me? And it got lost in the mix because, like I said, that movie was so hard to do. I had to hire sometimes. I had the casting process in Toronto at that point was nothing like it was. So that got missed. And now three, his agent called mine again. Like, look, John, I was like, yes, please, this time, let's do something.
One could argue another creative silver lining that came out of all of your prep for these pitches was the Boondock Saints Bible you created, tracing their stories from origins all the way through where they'd be today. Which leads us to talk here about the book series that in turn inspired. What can your fan base around the world look forward to within the deeper backstories you'll be telling in the upcoming novel and audiobook?
I had this Bible. I have this Bible that, you kind of do like maybe a half a page, episode 1, and then another, you go through all 10 to 12 episodes. So I did that. I kind of knew where the story was going in my brain. And then you have a pitch document, for like when you go in the room, you want to take about 15, 20 minutes, the first 15, 20 minutes of the hour, talking to the executives, getting them excited about the project. I had done one of those that encapsulated character descriptions, along with there was like slides playing on a TV that there was a guy there, making sure my dude was making sure that all the right pictures were showing behind me when I did. Again, training you on how to make a TV pitch. Going through that process was great because some of those pitches I really boned it, and some of them, in the room almost. So that Bible, though, became the basis for the book. I realized in going through it, what I was really trying to do was the idea behind the television show, and same idea behind the book, is setting the brothers in present day. We two boys who grew up with this rosy perception of life in America, the land of plenty, city on a hill, where the American dream is, and they want their little slot. Then they finally come over here to find what's happening today. That's a lot. To see Connor and Murphy, youthful, get to Boston, boots on the ground today, and see what we see every day, have to deal with what we deal with every day, I thought would be a lot more potent a story, rather than just continuing it from where we left off on a movie. It didn't make any sense to me. So that's the basis of the book. The brothers arrive on our shores at this time. And with all the corruption, unfairness, injustice we are seeing on a daily, they're going to deal with that, right? And it's another reason that the book, I guess, came so easy. I'd already kind of plotted it out with the television show, and I kicked myself in the nuts and came up with the first line. And it was a bit of a template to follow. But yeah, the book, I mean, and then like new characters. There's a female character, and what I'm going to do with her is going to flip fans' hats back. She's a detective named Francine Escardo, and she's as Boston as it gets. Jeans, leather jacket, sneakers. Her partner is a much more buttoned down professional cop, but she's got the highest conviction rate and the highest kill rate in Boston PD. And it's because she's crazy, kind of. And when this vigilante situation starts up, she has a list of people that she knows got away with murder, that they tried to prosecute, and she knows they did it. And she's going to start killing them and rigging the crime scenes to make it look like the brothers did it. I cannot wait to start toying with something like that. This first volume 1 introduces her and her psychoses, which fits right into mission, right into what everybody's doing. And then where I'm going to go with her is going to be really fun. So yeah, that's another thing. And why doing a book? Why kick myself in the ass for not doing it sooner? Why doing a book is so fun. You don't have to deal with agents and lawyers and producers and actors and all this bullshit. It's just you and the keys, man. Twinkle the keys, and I could just be walking around in my day and see something funny, and I'll make a story and exaggerate the shit out of what I just saw. It could be tragic, it could be funny, it could be sad, it could be violent even, but these things pop into my head and they're starting to translate to a book. This is what I've discovered, the idea that those are the more exciting things for fans and readers, right? When they actually go do something. But what I've discovered by writing the book, because what Boondock Saints volume, I'm writing a Boondock Saints book series. What Boondock Saints volume one is we start them off in Ireland. The brothers save their money, steal into the country illegally, get to Boston, and they're just thinking we're going to do the same thing, American dream stuff that every illegal does. We'll eventually get citizenship, make our own business. The McManus Brothers Construction Co. They're in construction, right? And then it kind of hits me while I'm illegals don't come here and do this. They try to stay as quiet as church mice. They don't go to the cops. They don't go to hospitals. They don't go to banks. So what's been really interesting for me is to watch and devise how Connor and Murphy get lured into that world to do that crazy thing over and over again, and the fun you can have with it. I mean, imagine, if they try to maybe not kill somebody, but teach them a lesson, and they end up doing it. What about moral and spiritual crises? We have to show the steps to vigilantism, to the real kind that they do. And then you start finding out things like, how difficult would that be for cops to catch two smart, clever brothers like that who were illegals? They're not on the radar anywhere, for them to even figure out that they actually have vigilantes on the loose in their city. That's going to take, that's going to be in the second book. They're going to be suspecting by the end of the first because some wild shit's been happening, right? So there's all these really cool story things that you can even questions that I've now answered some of them in the first book. It's just about done. I'll probably be done in 2 weeks. But why did they not know their father? How did they meet Rocco? Do the brothers actually believe that they were chosen by God to do this? Because they don't say that. They never really say that. So you, in exploring all this new story, it's just giving birth to more story. Like I just made up a scene about them meeting Rocco that if we shot this would be one of the funniest goddamn things ever. But it's providing this longer, deeper journey with the brothers who fans are already in love with, but now also you get to know what they're thinking. Imagine if one brother is a lot more down with Jesus and spiritual than the other one. The other one, goes to church with him, kind of annoyed. Yeah, stand up, sit down, say the thing, but he's not really all in it. Whereas the other one is, then something happens and they start reversing roles. you know, One of them goes, wait a minute, that can't be a coincidence. The other one's like, fuck it, it is. It is. Let's go get a beer. So there's all this fun. There's all this, yeah, you know, there's violence, obviously. But there's all this fun, and there's this idea that at any moment, Connor and Murphy can turn the sort of downtrodden area of Southie and their favorite bars into a pauper's fucking paradise. And everybody there with all their problems can take just a minute to do something fun and stupid with the boys. And yeah, the next day they're on somebody. They're surveilling, planning, arguing about how they're going to get away with it, what their risk is. So yeah, it's been but I have to tell you this, man. I was so intimidated to write a book. I looked at scripts as just child's play, right? Writing a book now, I'm on the shoulders of giants before me who have done. I mean, I remember when I read James Joyce, I had to whip out a fucking dictionary, and look up this guy's vocabulary was off the hook, and it increased my vocabulary. So for 10 years, I've been planning on writing a book, and I never could do it until recently. And it was because one day I just sat down and wrote the first sentence, which was, talk, you little shite. That's it. That's all I had. And then I just started going, and I was like, why the hell didn't I force myself to do this? But yeah, first sentence just took off like a rocket. I started out, I was like, all right, we should probably do around 20 I'm at 40 chapters and I'm not done. We're probably going to end around 42, 43. I'm wrapping it up. But that's another thing. Writing, I didn't know it was going to happen like this. But all these B, C, and D stories seem to be going off on tangents, and then they all start coming together at the end. They were all going towards the same place, even though it didn't feel like that. You know, you can have an A story where the brothers are doing something, and a B story where the cops are, say, threatening the threat of being caught. You don't want the brothers to get caught. Oh my God. And you kind of think that's where it's going, and it doesn't. It zigs when it wants you to zag, but then it's preserved for third or fifth act, uh, just mind-blowing story where you're like, oh, you know what? I didn't even think of that. That just kind of happened as I was writing. I don't know if you've done a lot of books, my friend, and you've been published all over the place. And I don't know if that happens that way with other writers, but with me, sometimes I just write, have faith, and don't even think about where it's going because I think, something's going to happen in here somewhere while I'm doing this. That's the reason I'm doing this right now without knowing why. I love audiobooks. I just kind of recently got into those. I had never listened to one. Over the last year and a half, I think I've probably listened to maybe 7 to 10. I had to go on long car journeys sometimes. They're doing some whiskey stuff, all the Saints whiskey up in Kentucky. I had to be up there to sign bottles and so I'd be going on these long road trips. And I'm listening to audiobook and I'm like, where the hell has this been my whole life? Right. And you look at it, it's almost depressing because you look at it as like 6 hours and 17 minutes. I'm like, 6 hours and 17 minutes. And it was all so great. So what I thought was, why not do an audiobook first and approach it like you would a film? Use that skill I already have to appeal to an audience I already have. This is I want to use Foley sound, gunshots. I want to use some of the music in there and get some new music. Man, there is some real good music being made, and we should talk about that a little bit later. And I want to narrate the thing. My fans know my voice. I can do it. I already kind of tried for 5 chapters, just kind of went in and figured it out on my own. And to prove that I wanted to hear myself and see it. And then, all these friends I've had for 30 years in Hollywood that are VO experts, that can help me out on the voices and really kill something, man. And I have a very kind of visual tone when I'm writing something. I want to try to make you be able to smell the gun smoke, man. So I'm looking at it like a mini movie production where I don't have to deal with any of the hard asses I've had to deal with in the movie business. Now I have all these friends that can do voices. Now I know so many sound studios and I have friends there that they'll do this in 2 seconds. You know, and then this Foley studio I had in Hollywood. Oh my God, I hope they're still. I haven't even checked to see if they're still around. I should do that, but yeah, I want to make something that's much closer to a fan seeing a movie than listening to an audiobook. But we're releasing the audiobook first. And for the print public, the digital book and the physical in print book, yeah, I'm kind of also thinking there should these have covers. There's all kinds of artists that do cover work. What are we going to do there? Because we have to have something that kind of suggests all the old classic imagery, but I don't know, something new. I don't even know what I'm looking for there. But yeah, and chapter headings with what I'm doing is I'm putting a Bible verse under so it'll say chapter 15, corner boys, and then it'll be a Bible verse that encapsulates the theme of the chapter, right? And the brothers are all about that. We love the ritualistic biblical tone thing. So, what does a picture at every chapter heading look like? I mean, I love those old woodcuts that they had in the early days, but now they're really getting jiggy with it, man. So, I would love to do. I mean, 40 artists, each got a chapter. I mean, show me something. Give me 10 example. I'll pick something. We'll have something with artwork, man. So yeah, looking forward to that. But we're going audiobook first. That's the highest growing uh, niche in book sales is audiobooks. Went up 40% last year, and it's going up even higher this year by the statistics. So I think in this day and age where people don't do it like me and you more, Jake, anymore, Jake. I used to love to curl up with a book. I still do, but the kids today don't. So I want to hit that hard and fast. And then, yeah, then we'll release the digital book. Then we'll release the physical copy. And, that's also been lost too. I'm wondering if I'll ever get that chance to, go to a bookstore where they're selling my book and at least take a selfie.
What can you tell viewers about what's in store within the upcoming The Blood Spoon Council? What can you tell viewers about what's in store within your next upcoming film, The Blood Spoon Council?
Since then, I've had friends for 25 years in the business, other writers that I trust and I collaborate with all the time. My new film that we're going out with, we just signed the deal the other day. We're going to start casting up. It's called The Blood Spoon Council. And I wrote that with my friend Chris Lasseter, who's a great guy, terrific writer, savage writer, actually. And yeah, I collaborate with guys all the time who who I know have the same, you know, kind of mindset and skill set. So we don't have to waste our time on amateurs. A psychological thriller action movie called The Blood Spoon Council. I wrote it over 20 years ago. It's that top drawer secret project the writer pulls out and brushes the dust off of every year and makes it stronger and harder. I did about 2 years worth of research into serial killers before I set pen to paper on it. And like I said, me and my friend Chris Lasser, I wrote it, and he was helping develop the story every day. We lived together at the time. We were roommates in Hollywood. This was basically the first thing I wrote after Boondock. Um, and it's extremely precious to me. And the premise is the same as Boondock. It's vigilantism, but it's the idea that there's this team headed up by a mastermind profiler. They call them 1% profilers, who him and his team, the Blood Spoon Council, are somehow discovering, kidnapping, killing serial killers and delivering them to the doorstep of the FBI with basically a roadmap to where all their bodies are and everything already figured out. They're doing their job for them. And the FBI wants to catch these guys. So they bring in this young guy, almost like a professor-esque Frank Quinn, who's also a 1%er, but has refused to work for the FBI. What he does is he writes books on profiling, and they are considered the best. But he's turned down the FBI a bunch of times. But when they bring him in and show him this and make him sign an NDA, he's like, "Are you fucking kidding me? This is happening," And he realizes that these guys, the Blood Spoon Council is responsible for the murders of 7 serial killers in 5 years. And he realizes what that is. That's an unbelievable record. I mean, the FBI gets maybe 1 every 10 to 12 years, and they virtually got to walk themselves in the front door of the Hoover building. And these guys are out there doing it. So it becomes a cat and mouse game between a mastermind profiler who's the ultimate vigilante and his highly dedicated crew. And you start figuring out how they're doing it. And a 1%er profiler who is working for the FBI and trying to develop a profile on John Declan, who is the Blood Spoon Council's mastermind. And the more he works, the more Frank Quinn works for the FBI, the more he doesn't like it, but the closer he's getting to Declan. And you have this feeling that he just wants to sit down and talk with this guy. He wants to meet this guy and commune with him and discuss this gift they both have. And that happens in a very action-packed way. And then we go off into the third act and chaos ensues. I don't want to say too much about it, but yes, this is the The next very legit thing that I wrote after Boondock, we have just sealed up a deal. I'm working with rather these two great producers, Jordan Gertner and Scott Clayton. I will again, my storytelling is now the important. I'm going to be writing the Boondock book series forever, basically. I want to just keep writing those till I die. But these types of things now, I do have to produce on Boondock 3. This one, I have written it, I am producing it, and me and the producers found this amazing young director, Tyler Atkins. He's an Aussie, and he did this beautiful little film that was like an art house classic down there. We start talking on Zoom just like this, he and I realized this kid's got the chops for this. He's also got the right agent, guy named Robert Newman. And he and then brought Lassiter in, and all three of us have just been breaking down this script word by word. It's been such a fun process. But we're looking at trying to shoot this as soon as possible in Louisiana. Some of the story takes place at or around New Orleans, the New Orleans area. Where are the essential? Here, fun fact. There's been a Boondock Saint bar in the French Quarter of New Orleans for the last 20 years. It's called the Boondock Saint. The movies play on constant loop, and it's owned by retired cops. And I got nothing to do with the place. So we're going to try to use that as an HQ when we shoot the film. Everybody's pretty excited about it. But right now we're in that stage where we've got all the behind the camera worked out. Myself producing and Jordan and Scott. Lassiter's going to be there working on art department with us. And Ty's going to be in the director's chair. Now we're at the stage of, okay, let's get everything in front of the camera done now. We got to start casting. And we are going to go to some heavy hitters. I know. I mean, just who comes to mind? Let me ask you. I'll describe Declan's character for you. He's basically a cowboy, a Texas cowboy. Maybe has that kind of old Civil War longer stash. Walks with that swagger, talks slow. He's got that kind of slow gin Southern, like Georgia accent, almost like Doc Holliday. And he's 10 steps ahead of everyone. Seeing him, the first time we see him give a profile, you can only throw up pictures, crime scene photos. You can never tell a profiler how an investigation is going, share any outside information. He sees the raw data, and you see what a genius this guy is and how he can pull those things out that make sense later on. You're like, oh shit, that's how he did that. But they seem like a miracle when he's doing it, right? And all of his people call him boss. They worship and respect him. And he ends up there's a reason why he can afford to do this. And nobody knows outside of his crew who he is. It's almost like that person that if the world was on fire, he'd put a hot dog on a stick. In thinking about it, it's so cool because you have the same thing happening with the younger profile. Now if you went with an older gent over here, you go with an older guy for the younger profiler, right? Because it's really kind of a father-son movie. They're not related, but you're getting like who the big lion, the lion of the jungle is, and the young lion coming up to challenge, right? There has to be that father-son antagonism between them. So you can have it like, just put an old actor in your mind. Now Frank, the younger guy, can be in his 40s or 50s. But if Declan's in his 40s or 50s, now we got to be in 20s with Frank. So the dynamic switches and changes depending on who you cast. I looked also at one of my favorite all-time actors, Mel Gibson, could walk right into this. The amount of times I've seen him do accents too perfectly. I remember I watched his movies for years, didn't even know he was Australian until he got interviewed on TV, like in the early 90s, and he's so good. And I think America needs a hero right now, and I think the South needs a hero right now. I'm so looking forward to the Blood Spoon Council because it's almost like it takes the theme of Boondock one step further because you can find, people today that weak soy eating people that would be like, no one is above the law. What the brothers do is wrong. They're no better than the criminals they kill. And I've read some, critiques like that, but I don't think you're going to find many people that will stand up to for the rights of serial killers. You know, and they call it like pedophiles are now minor attracted people. What are serial killers like? What would you call them? You know, stranger eliminating uh somethings. They come up with a stupid soy boy name for that. But the thing is, it's much more extreme. We were all interested and curious about serial killers, and it's much more extreme. You're not going to get too many people sticking up for the rights of serial killers. We want them gone because they kill our kids and us. So it's purely bad. It's much more black and white than Boondock. Much more black and white, and I think a much more mature thing for sure. And maybe even something that drags people's feet to the fire in a way that I have not been able to do with the Boondock brand.
Finally, looking back over the last 25 years on what has been a very unique storytelling journey to say the least, what rules of the writing road do you dispense to those seeking to follow in your footsteps, even when the path might get a little bit rough at times?
Two things, and hear me well, youngsters. You want to be a great writer? Read. Constantly read everything you can get your hands on and know how to dissect it. Know what good writing is and what bad writing is. And don't think you're a writer because your mom likes reading your great short stories. It's when strangers that don't know you read something when you're not around. All right. So read. The second thing is get the fuck out of. I mean, if you want to do what I did, follow it into the movie business. If you want to write scripts, you got to get the hell to New York or Los Angeles. And if you don't, no one's taking you seriously. But yeah, if you just want to be an author, you can do that from home. Hell, I'm doing it now. I kind of did it in the reverse way. But yeah, I still read. And so, I can write the hell out of something. So I guess those two things. If you want to be a writer, read and know what great writing is, as opposed to medium, middle fair to middling, as opposed to terrible but successful. Like I read 50 Shades of Grey, and I got about 50 pages in before I puked all over myself. That is not what I would consider good writing. That is what I would consider cotton candy, dessert. And I could see how the writer tapped into the kind of sexuality that women have but don't like to talk about. I could see what they were doing, but not my kind of writing. I would consider that a specific niche type of writing for specific people that it may not be for everybody. And you're going to have to read books like that sometimes. Sometimes you're going to pull back and go, "What? I just wasted a few hours of my life and I can't get that back." But yeah, those two things. Read, and if you're going to write scripts, you go to LA or New York. If you're not, you can be an author from home, but yeah, kind of get off your ass too. Maybe the substitute for moving to New York or Los Angeles, if you want to just be a book writer, is you got to start knocking on doors electronically, having as many Zoom calls with book agents as you can, and really kind of work your I don't know, work your convincing people skills and have a damn good product ready to go. That manuscript better be hot because nobody's coming out to, the boondocks of Indiana or Idaho to find the great new author anymore. Those things don't happen. You have to do it yourself. So just be prepared.
So, Troy, as somebody who invented characters out of whole cloth and then saw them come to life on the screen in two different movies and an upcoming third, what was it like instead of directing actors to be playing all of these characters by yourself in your head on the page and then auditorily out loud acting out all their different parts in the audiobook?
Yeah, that was that was that was harder than I thought. I've always been able to do accents and stuff. Like when Braveheart came out, he can do all the Scottish and Irish and stuff. Me and my friends have always messed with that, but I had to dive deep, man, on this one. and getting a lot of unexpected praise from the fans by narrating it myself. You know, there was like Rocco was completely blown away, calls me up like, Troy, what the fuck, man? And doing all the accents. Like there's one though that I mean, I had to do like some research for. I'm doing like an Arabic accent, a bunch of Irish accents, keeping the brothers kind of separated, Boston accents. I didn't even know how many accents were in the damn thing. But there was a gal that Nick Hall from our fan site, Boondock Saints Legion, hooked me up with, and she's a professor who teaches Gaelic. So she had to write out what I needed said, right? And then record it so that I could phonetically mimic what she was doing. So, anybody that actually knew Gaelic, if they were listening to me, would be like, oh, you did it right. So, even those types of things, it was really difficult. But I mean, I think you and I talked about this privately, but I love the books that are narrated by the author, you know? And it's almost like if like some guy gets stranded on an island and survive, I want to hear that guy. If he wrote the book, I want to hear that guy's voice do that. So in a way, that's kind of what was the overall plan. But wow, I had no idea what I was getting into.
Now, interesting for Boondock Saints fans, rather than this being a prequel, this takes place in the present day. Why did you feel that the present day was the right time to set Connor and Murphy McManus loose on the streets in this newest edition of the series?
Right now we got 5-star ratings on reviews on everything, and it's fantastic. It's unbelievable. But there's a couple of fans that didn't understand that this was basically a prequel, and when the boys get to age and come to America, it takes place in the present, you know. So it's actually something called a requel. I found this out. A requel is where it starts in prequel phase, and then when your characters kind of, it's almost like when they get to Boston in their early 20s, you figure like that feels like the beginning of Boondock One. And it's not. It's a new story that takes place from there. It's a much deeper, longer thing than where we see the brothers, how they got into the sort of shadowy world of vigilantism, and many, many things going on in their lives. And we get to really get to know them a lot better. So a requel is probably, it could be a little bit difficult for some fans to understand, but most of them just kind of got it. Yeah, yeah, this is taking place in present day now. So, and the reason I did that was because I wanted the brothers to be here with us. I mean, imagine that, working your ass off for all those years to get a nest egg and steal into the United States and go specifically to Boston, only to arrive here, boots on the ground, America, and see what we're all seeing, you know, where they come for the American dream essentially, and then they find it crumbling around them, you know, and they don't like that one fucking bit. And that's one of the reasons, it's one of the footsteps into that, minefield of vigilantism. So I wanted them seeing, hearing, smelling, touching what we do every day. And whereas an American citizen is likely to just walk by the next thing that they begrudgingly accept as the new way of life in America, and the brothers just don't. They don't accept that. So in a way, it kind of reminds us of who we are, and that's what I wanted. I wanted the boys with us in the here and now. And I also think it's like a much more target rich environment. I mean, if I just did what we did 20, told the story of 25 years ago, criminals and crime itself have changed in the last 25 years. We're not really going to be killing the people that we hate, and that's what I wanted. We want to go after today's villains, the ones that we don't like at all, and we want to see justice delivered to them. And that was the way to do it, to set the story in a contemporary here and now America.
Your battle over the years to keep the rights to this series in certain respects is notorious, even captured in its own documentary. 25 years later, to have the literary rights free to do whatever you wanted with must have been very creatively liberating.
Oh yeah, well, this is going to be a book series, and it's funny too because fans have done this to me since day one. They're like, "Yay! Where's the next one?" You know. So now I'm already working on book two. It's going to be a series as long as I can make it. And it doesn't seem to have any. It's almost like you create a character like Lee Child's is Jack Reacher or Connolly's Bosch. It can just continue and continue and continue based on those characters. And that's what Connor and Murphy are to me. There's those characters that'll last forever, and they kind of represent us, the average Joe, but they do the one thing we all wish we could do. So I can take that in a book series forever, man.
And it's going to just basically be the Boondock Saints book series.
Yes, yes. And we're releasing the first chapter. I think it's like 12 to 15 minutes, the audiobook chapter, on Boondoctor podcast on YouTube. So fans can just listen to that first chapter and see if they, want to get the book and stuff, that if that gets them. But I've already right now I am like the happiest author on the planet, After the book was released about a month ago, month and a half, all those reviews, man, like I don't read reviews too much in terms of movie reviews, but the book reviews were really important to me because that's you're on the porch with the big dogs if you want to call yourself an actual author. And the fans are just loving it. So in all these deals, like you go make a movie deal, yeah, you have to give up, control of the IP. They need to go make a movie, and we've made that deal. But in every one of those, what I've done is just carved out the literary rights. And some exciting other things are happening too. I would just got off of a Zoom with a super like like the superhero of animated series, guy named Adi Shankar, and we're thinking of comic books and doing an animated series on Boondock, and uh, yeah, being in control of it, I almost look at it like, look, I built this house. This all came from here and here. So yeah, I should be able to do what I want, and carving out the literary rights from every deal. Because what they want to do, like when they go, oh, we're gonna make you, a movie deal, Troy. They want everything in every format that is every right attached to it. So I guess I've been smart enough to carve out some and get the control there. But it's also because I knew I wanted to do it. You know, I carved out the literary rights from the movie deal because I was like, I'm writing a book. So it's just like telling them straight out, like, look, here's what I'm doing. You,
Yeah.
you get what you get, but I'm keeping my ability to tell, and the freedom it gives me is I can now tell stories about Connor and Murphy forever. The freedom of doing a book is crazy. And we're going to start to pursue an actual physical book publishing deal too here now.
Yeah.
So, yeah, just thinking about like that, like what would a book look like? What would a book series on your shelf look like? I mean, my fans in particular need that physical thing. And the business models have changed today. Like for instance, here's a little inside industry stuff. There was a I was being offered a television series deal, which I have been pursuing for the last 10, 15 years, and the movie deal for three at the same time. All right. So both parties didn't know about each other. It's Thunder Road over here and Universal Television over here. And I just negotiated the deals both to where they, could get signed. And then I disclosed to the parties. Now, I didn't see that as any kind of conflict. A television series would be two new young brothers, in today's world doing their thing in Boston. And the movie, I just figured, the movie franchise can go with the established characters and Sean and Norm and live over here. But they both were like, nope, You can't do the TV guys were like you can't do a movie if you're going to do a series, and the movie guys were like you can't do the TV series if you're going to do. We want those rights. I had Sophie's Choice to make. I was staring down the barrel, man. That was a difficult one. But I know that essentially my fans want those two boys in their pea coats doing a three. Rather because a television series with two new actors would have been something I have to, all right, now I have to make this cool, this new thing that you didn't know you wanted. And I knew I'd get a bunch of blowback, but yeah, I could have done it. I really wished we could have done both, but I had to make the choice, and I made the choice based on what I feel the fans truly want. You know, if you're lucky enough to have a fan base and they're telling you what you want, what they want, you do it 100% of the time, you're screwed, you know? And that being said, this ebook and audio book, available on Amazon and Audible, is something they did not know they want, did not know. I just dropped 17 and a half hours of Boondock, brand new Boondock on the fans, and they got no idea yet. They're just starting to find out now, you know. And those reviews are coming in, and it's like, you know, the areas of Boondock where I have control, I now just opened up a whole new, I don't know, field to run around in, and for Boondock fans to run around in, and just regular readers. It's not just, you don't have to know Boondock Saints to enjoy a book, to the book. It's a crime thriller, you know. But yeah, there's in navigating the business over the last 25 years, you got to be really kind of judicious about your rights, keeping a hold of your rights and being able to do things. And yeah, I guess I was just smart enough to pull that off, Jake.
So, with Christmas coming up, it sounds like this is the perfect digital stocking stuffer.
It's an odd stocking stuffer, but get the book, get the audio book or the electronic book on Amazon or Audible, you know, depending on what you like. But for Christmas, yeah, this is it's funny with Boondock. We spike at holidays, Christmas, St. Patrick's Day, Thanksgiving, for just say Easter for unknown reasons, but we do. And yeah, getting somebody the audiobook or the ebook of Boondock Saints Volume 1 on Amazon or Audible this Christmas would probably be a pretty cool gift for a Boondock fan.
Troy, it's been awesome talking today. Thanks so much for taking out time to be on About the Authors TV.
All right, thanks, brother. I appreciate it.